Hello everybody, this is Rob Redman of Pride Studios and welcome to this Q&A video. I'd like to thank Marcus Benjamin for sending in this particular question, which was he wanted to know how you can make kind of a whole load of tentacles or dendrites or kind of thick fibres all at one time. And there's a few different ways you can do it, but one really easy way to do it is using the tracer, the MoGraph tracer object, in conjunction with a particle emitter. So it's going to be a quick video just to show you how to get it up and running. It's a very simple process, but if you hadn't thought of it before, then it might be worth having a look at. So I'm going to start by coming up to my simulate menu and go to particles, and I'm just, for this particular example, I'm just going to use a standard particle emitter, and I'm just going to increase its size just so we've got some room to play with here. Hit R and rotate that round, just holding shift so that locks to 5-degree increments. So what we've got here is just a standard particle emitter, and if I just bring back my animation controls, I can hit play, get that going, and then in my particle controls I can start playing around with some of the settings. And what we're going to have is each one of these particles is going to form kind of the core of a tentacle. So I'm going to increase the amount. I'm just going to go to 20, and I'll make sure that the renderer is the same so that what I work with in the viewport is the same as what will render. I'm going to slow down the speed just a little bit. In fact, let's go half what it was before. So that's looking better, and what we'll do is we'll pause this at a particular frame, just so we get the look we want. In the emitter settings itself, I'm just going to add a little bit of horizontal and vertical angle to this, just to maybe 5 degrees. That might even be slightly too much, but that should be enough for now. And what I'm going to do is also add a little bit of turbulence. And by adding some turbulence, what we'll get is some random movement here, and that gives us some nice control just by looking at the amount. So go back into your simulate and particles menu, and if you add a turbulence, you could use wind as well. That would work fine. Now let's just zoom in so we can see what's going on. Now they're not going too far off course, and that's just because of the scale of the scene and the default strength setting of the turbulence. So I'm going to knock that up from 5 to, let's try 20. That might be a touch too strong. Let's take that back down to, say, 15. Okay, I think that's fine. That should be okay. So now, if you imagine that each one of these particles being emitted here is going to trace the path of the kind of spine of each of our tentacles, and I'm just going to reset the scene back to the beginning. What I'll do is come back into the MoGraph menu up here, and I'm going to add a tracer, and I held down Alt so that the emitter becomes a child of the tracer, just to keep my scene tidy. And you'll see that the emitter, because it was selected, is already down here in the trace link field, and we're going to trace the paths. If you drop this down, you can see there's a couple of options in there. We're going to use trace paths, and you will notice that there are options here for thinking particles. So if you wanted to use this method to perhaps grow tentacles from a surface, you could use thinking particles to create an emitter based on it could be a polygon selection. You could use a selection tag to say where the tentacles are going to grow from, and that opens up all kinds of possibilities that maybe we could get into in another video. But using thinking particles, it obviously has much more power and control than a standard emitter, but for simple scenes this can be quite useful, and it's a good simple way of demonstrating what's going on. So I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to pause that just where I see fit, and that's the frame 73 for me. I'm just going to hide these controls by control clicking on the little dotted lines there, and you can see we've now got these lines, and at the moment they're not really doing anything other than just showing the path of each particle. So what we're going to do is add in a sweep NURBS and a spline profile for these shapes, and I'm just going to go for a simple circle, which we will reduce in size down to probably around 10 centimeters, and I'll drop that under the sweep NURBS along with the tracer. Okay, so now you can see what we've got going on. We need to do some adjusting of the settings for our sweep knobs here, I'm going to go to the caps section and choose fillet cap, and I'll do that for both ends for now. We can adjust it later on. Now we can see that this is all looking a bit too fat and unwieldy, so I'm going to go back into the object. I'll reduce the subdivisions down here, and then I'm going to go into the circle, and I'm just going to choose natural, and I'm going to put 2 subdivisions in here, which is still giving us a reasonably smooth look, but while we're working on it, I think that looks, it's good enough, and it will speed everything up for us. I can go down to 1, and it's actually still reasonably smooth, so we can even use 1 for this. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same on the tracer. I'm just going to have a look at the options I've got here. So I've got intermediate points, none. I could go into natural and then smooth this right back down to 1 as well, which will probably give us a very similar look, but it just means that you've got that 1 level of control extra. Now I want to smooth off the caps just a little bit, so I'm going to go back into my sweep knobs, and under the caps section I'm going to choose 3 steps, like so, and I'm going to concentrate mostly on this end. So in fact, just to save a few polygons, I'll reduce the start cap, which will be the bottom version where the start of that spline, just going to reduce that down to 1, and the top one I'm going to put to 3, and then I can just increase the size of that cap to get a bit of rounding. And if you want more divisions on here, you can add them in, but I would suggest doing that at render time rather than at this particular point. Now what I also want to do is, with the sweep knobs, I want to control the kind of growth of the spline along the length, and you do that as you would with any other sweep knobs by opening up the details tab here. Now if you're in R13, you'll find this is slightly different method to how it has been in previous versions. So to add a point along here, you just control click. So I'm going to add 1 there, and I'm going to add 1 there as well. And what I want to do is just bring down the start and the very end point, like so, and I'm also going to bring down that one there just a touch, and possibly that one there, just to give a kind of a bulbous end. And you can choose how far along the length of that spline it works just by dragging to the left and right, and I quite like about there. Now I do want to, let's just zoom into one of these. I might want to just tweak the end here. I quite like this kind of lip we've got going on, but I think I might just adjust the caps slightly. So I'm going to go back into the caps option and just have a look at what I can do with the, I'm on the wrong end. I want this end here, so I can either increase that or decrease the size to how I see fit, and I like just a touch bigger like this. Okay, so this is the kind of basic look excuse me, and that I was going for. Now we can see that some of these are looking a little outrageous. The bottom here, this isn't quite right, and this is where you may want to increase the bottom to match up just a little bit. So I'm going to increase that to probably about 10, just so it's not too silly, and I'm going to decrease the top just a touch. So you can see that you've got 2 ways of controlling this end, or the very end scale where these little kind of mushroomy shapes are. One is by using the fillet caps radius, and one would be by using the object here and the details section at the bottom. I'm not going to worry about the rotation so much. I'm quite happy with them just to go straight up. I don't want any twist in there. But this is one very good way of quickly modelling a load of tentacles, and it's quite efficient, and you can get that kind of organic randomness very simply by adding in some turbulence. Now if you wanted them all to be kind of bending over to one direction, but still have that kind of random element to them, then you could add in a wind effector, and that would work quite well. Or you could have an attractor, and you could even animate the attractor so that these all kind of grow up to follow a particular point. That would work quite well, because the path would then change as the effector was moved around. So have a play with that, look at some of the different ways you can use it. It's quite a useful way of doing it. I think it might be worth looking at some thinking particle versions, emitting particles off a surface, in a future video. But once again, thanks Marcus for the question, and if anybody else has any quick questions, then do email me or tweet to me, or leave a comment on my blog. Anyway, just get in touch and I'll see what I can do recording another video for you. So I hope that's been of some use. I've been Rob Redman, and I'll see you all again soon. Thanks very much. Bye bye.